The two-state solution is a fraud. It's a fraud by the Israeli government and the Palestinian government on the people of Israel and Palestine to give them some hope, as if they are working on some sort of solution, that there is some sort of a formula that we need to reach in the future. The two-state solution has been voted upon by the United Nations in 1947. Since then, the Israeli and the Palestinian governments, the American governments, the European governments, the Russian governments, presidents, prime ministers have been negotiating two states for years, many, many times. Not only did they fail, but they made things worse, a lot worse. Palestinians and Israelis are separated by a wall. The Palestinians are under occupation. The Israelis are occupiers. Many, many people on both sides have been killed as a result of the negotiations themselves. The two-state solution has been debunked completely. The audacity of these people to call it the two-state solution is amazing. Why just not call it two-state? Why do they have to call it the two-state solution? Let other people decide if it's a solution or not. Well, let's examine the two-state solution. Separating people, creating a wall or a border between Muslims and Jews is the opposite of peace. It's segregation. It is unacceptable to most people around the world. It is not peace. It's the opposite of peace. And this is what they are working on. And it has failed again and again and again. Separating people based on religion does not make peace. The Israeli and the Palestinian governments have failed, and they are camouflaging their failure by bombarding the people of Israel and Palestine with the idea that they have some sort of solution. This is why I suggest the creation of a common government based on secular principles for the people of Israel and Palestine, in Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem. 14 million people that would exist and would become a reality. It's very easy to create it. It's very easy to create an election for it. A government for the entire people of Israel and Palestine that will work exclusively to make peace, and that will exist despite the Israeli and the Palestinian governments, even if they oppose it. You see, the Israeli and the Palestinian governments are not really the legitimate government of the Israeli and the Palestinian people. They are not the legitimate government of the entire area of Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem. They are not the legitimate government of the 14 million people. Therefore, it is possible, it requires, it's necessary to create a government for people who live together based on secular democratic principles, with separation between government and religion, for the sole purpose or the exclusive purpose of making peace regardless of the wishes or perhaps the objection of the Palestinian and the Israeli governments. This government, this common government, could be created. The elections could be created online. We have the technology for it. We can elect parliament members in Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem that will represent their district. We can elect a president and vice president, one Palestinian, one Israeli, that would exclusively work for peace and work, if necessary, with the Israeli and the Palestinian governments and with governments and institutions all over the world for the exclusive purpose of making peace. And for that matter, if the Israeli and the Palestinian governments want to create this mirage that is called the two-state solution, they can do that. For that matter, if the people of Israel and Palestine want to create a two-state, then the parliament, the Israeli and Palestinian common government, could create that.